Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. You know, I still to this day don't know why the $2 billion to Jared from Saudi Arabia hasn't been investigated.
From what I understand, it is starting to be investigated.
Yes,
It just took 2 years, but I don't understand either. I mean, I really want them to do this quickly, and there. You know what I mean? Where there's smoke, there's fire on this one.
Yeah. Dana, can we just say, Republican men don't get to talk about lady parts. They don't. It is always so just incomprehensible and disrespectful. I mean, even Chris Lavoie, he calls lady parts meat curtains, and he thinks you do something like a tiny accordion is a sexual thing you do to women. Boys just don't.
No.
Jody, no.
Oh, you would have no idea what to do with this equipment.
I know. I've worked that equipment in my younger days.
I think we all have a little idea. All the lesbians have a little idea what to do with that equipment. We just take it off and put it back in the nightstand when we're done.
Oh, yeah.
These are local stations, and I was saying it's particularly damaging because I think people tend to think that local news is not biased. Mm-hmm. It's their local, whatever.
Yeah, whatever the city hall is doing or whatever.
Yeah, but these are all right-wing talking points that are said and repeated on these stations all over the country.
The Wall Street Journal calling into question the mental fitness of President Joe Biden.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting calling into question the mental fitness of President Joe Biden.
As national correspondent Matt Galka tells us, the issue could be an election decider.
The issue could be an election decider.
And you wonder why polling shows Americans are concerned about Biden's age, right?
Absolutely. The media needs this. They want this. It's clickbait. They know it. They make money off this guy, and it's unfortunate. And it was Michelle, what is her last name? The comedian at the White House Correspondents' Center, Michelle Wolf, called everyone out and said, "You love him. You built this monster. You feed him. This is your fault too."
Yeah, but I particularly, somebody was pointing out so this starts with Rupert Murdoch orders this hit piece on Joe Biden in the Wall Street Journal. Then this gets repeated as if it's news everywhere. I keep comparing it to when Dick Cheney planted the WMD lies with the New York Times and then quoted the New York Times as the reason we needed to go into Iraq because they said there's weapons.
Right.
The only person quoted on the record is Kevin McCarthy in this Wall Street Journal, because otherwise they're all partisan Republicans, and he's a partisan Republican who is on record saying how sharp Joe Biden is.
Right.
In private and then in public. They quote just him in this piece, and then this is on every station in the country, right? That's what we're up against.
I don't know how to combat it.
Yeah. Well, and then this was other depressing news. Yesterday, partisan websites masquerading as media outlets now outnumber American newspaper sites, a research group that tracks misinformation said Tuesday, highlighting a local news crisis in a year of high-stakes election. Hundreds of sites mimicking news outlets, many of them powered by AI, have cropped up in recent months, fueling an explosion of polarizing or false narratives that are stoking alarm as the race for the White House intensifies. This is only going to get worse before
This is the only way they can win is to cheat, is to make fake things.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. I was reading an article online, and it's just a little innocent one, but there was a picture of a bald eagle, and it had two baby bald eagles, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, they're the cutest bald eagles," because the little baby ones look just like their mommy. The thing is, when a bald eagle is born, it's gray, and it doesn't have a yellow beard, and it doesn't have the white stuff until it's about 2 or 3, but no one knows that. And I know it's an innocent example, but no one can tell the difference anymore with AI and with the editing of tapes and with the editing of audio, what's real and what's not. And the Republicans are using it for evil.
Yeah.
And so we have to check stuff. We have to make sure. But unfortunately, we will. The people listening to Fox News will not. And so I don't know if there's any way to reach that.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, Chris, to your point about cheating. Texas conservatives want to end countywide voting. This is just, they are coming up with myriad and unique ways to try to stop people from voting. A long-running conservative push to get rid of countywide polling places is winning growing interest from state lawmakers, as well as a spot on the state Republican Party's list of legislative priorities for next year. Election officials are warning if legislators scrap the nation's countywide voting program, they will struggle to pull off changes that would be required, beginning with increasing their numbers of polling places. That means paying for hard-to-find additional locations, recruiting and paying workers to staff them, and obtaining more voting equipment. Election officials also worry confused voters could be disenfranchised by the shift. Well, that's exactly why they're doing it, right? Banning the program would force those voters to again cast their ballots only at their assigned precinct after years of allowing them to go to any voting site in the county. I mean, Dana, if they were confident in their ideas, they wouldn't keep thinking of how do we keep the most people from voting.
Absolutely. They have zero platform. It's not even they're not confident in their ideas. They don't have any ideas.
Right.
This is going to be one of the most voter-suppressed elections. We have got to find a way to combat it. If there is a city where they take a box off of a corner, we have to find a way to get it back. Yeah. If there's a rural area that is mostly black voters and all of a sudden the machines don't work, we need to have a contingency plan. We have got to make sure we are one step ahead of them because we are behind every single election. They were like, we just lost 3 hours of voting booths. How do we get this back?
Yeah, I'm one story after another. Marsha Blackburn recently, Fox Business host Larry Kudlow are promoting a false fear-mongering conspiracy theory that President Biden will be handing out green cards to undocumented immigrants in an effort to help them vote. This is, like you say, it depends on them putting out as much disinformation as they possibly can, fear-mongering. This one, dozens of candidates associated with an anti-government group founded by the right-wing militant Ammon Bundy. Oh, my God. Remember that guy? Do we still have the Bundy Bunch? Oh, my God. Yeah. Have stood for election for influential positions in local Republican parties in Oregon. I mean, there are any number of really alarming candidates, right? People involved in January 6th. It's one story is scarier than the next, right? Like just people involved in J6, people, these creepy evangelical candidates. I mean, it really is like their vision of this Handmaid's Tale, white Christian nationalist country.
It is, and I think one of the things we need to do, and I'm sorry if you covered it in the first 2 hours, but there was a special election in Ohio, and that candidate that everyone ignored because they didn't think they had a chance actually came within, I think it was like 9 points. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it was a district that Trump won by 30 points.
That's right.
And the Republicans put in over $500,000 into ads, and this candidate had $7,000 because no one thought he could win.
Yeah.
We have to treat every race like it's a competitive race that we can win and put money into these down ballot candidates. We've got to do it.
You know who's doing really well against Rick Scott? We had her on, Debbie Debbie for Florida.
Yes.
We had her on, and I'm going to say because we had her on. But you're right. We can do that. Like that is looking very competitive against Rick Scott in Florida. I feel like there's one more awful Republican candidate after another. The person running against Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota, where we just came from for Sexy Liberal, is being buffeted by reports. He has continuously been hauled in court for failure to pay child support. He's a former NBA player and right-wing podcaster, because of course. Yeah. But he said a lot of people have back child support. All you liberals really want is to shame people with kids because you're anti-human as.
Oh.
This is what they just dehumanize the other side, right?
Of course they have to, and we don't. We
liberals
love kids.
Are inhuman for saying you should support your kids. Like, right? Yeah.
They've got to find a talking point. They've been coached by the media. This is the retort when someone says this is what you yell back. And sometimes it's so outlandish and ridiculous that it stuns us into silence because we're like, what did he just say?
Oh, my God. And as you know, gay people are icky and don't have real families.
Right.
Hey, all. Glenn Kushner here. I hope you'll join me on my new audio podcast, Justice Matters. I'll be using my 30 years as a federal prosecutor and Army JAG to unpack, break down, and explain the legal issues of the day, particularly where the legal intersects with the political. Please look for Justice Matters with Glenn Kushner wherever you generally get your podcasts.